Hello there and welcome to my reaction to Iron and Blood, Warriors of Ravenloft, the worst fighting game, by Matt McMassels. I actually wanted to do more Matt McMassels content, but specifically like what happened. Not playlists, like series, because I am interested in the development of games and what went wrong if the game came out in a weird way. But I haven't gotten around to it, but I did get one game recommended that I am curious about, even though the video is quite old, a few years, and I'm not sure if it's worth it. But if some people did ask me to make more, so I might just go for it anyway. But here I am with his new video because I am actually interested in the worst fighting game, worst anything I am interested in. So like and subscribe, become a member. Let's begin, shall we? Almost started without putting it on screen. That would have been bad. Supposed to be that quiet.
Welcome back, Warriors, to the worst fighting game. The show where I try to find the worst fighting. You know how this works.
I don't
Criticon,
actually.
And it was really bad. And later on I played Expect No Mercy, which was even worse somehow.
Okay.
All along, there's been another fighting fiasco, which is probably even more well known than both of those aforementioned embarrassments.
Well, I didn't know about those two or this one.
Game magazines back in the day that I, ashamedly enough, was
Looks
jealous
terrible.
over because I didn't own a PlayStation 1.
I didn't want to swear in the video. God damn it.
Why am I tackling
Fuck.
it today? Well, you know, there's been far too much goodwill about the world of Dungeons and Dragons recently, so I felt it was high time to balance that out with the
I might have an opportunity to play Dungeons and Dragons
Iron and
IRL
Blood Warriors of Ravenloft.
kind of soon. I'm excited
This was
for
an
that.
attempt to expand the world-famous fantasy franchise into the red-hot genre of the fighting game, and is probably also the reason why it was never attempted again. But will it be able to cast a devastating fireball upon Expect No Mercy and reduce its legacy to ashes? Well, we won't know for sure until we get it in the ring. The history of this turd, we're starting off hot, is actually pretty interesting.
I'm gonna make it louder for
the
you.
original owners of D&D, had licensed out the property to SSI for a bunch of different computer games throughout the 80s. But once the 90s hit in all its neon glory, Dungeons and Dragons was eventually able to distance itself from the early accusations
Such a Dungeons and Dragons fighting game?
satanic communication tool.
This is the teaching of the occult. This is exactly what we were introduced into in Star Wars and E.T.
Thus allowing them to expand
Really?
their reach
E.T.,
even
okay.
further into other mediums.
I thought
like
it was about
video
friendship or
games.
something like that.
Not only was mainline stuff getting adapted, but other campaign scenarios / pocket dimensions like Mystara were getting licensed out as well. So, TSR granted permission for a fighting game based on the Ravenloft universe to Acclaim and plucky
not to
young
Acclaim.
Take-Two Interactive, who developed Iron and Blood for the PlayStation, DOS, and it was a shit show. The end. Oh wait, that's actually not very interesting at all.
5
Unfortunately, it ain't the full story. Take-Two,
it's
which
actually
is
better.
now a
That's
giant,
the game.
unfeeling video game conglomerate, came from humble beginnings, developing a select few different titles throughout the 90s, mostly for the PC, before transitioning into their final form as a publisher. Their only console game was Iron and Blood, or should I say Iron Blood, because originally the game was scheduled to come out on Panasonic's ill-fated and non-existent M2 hardware, but wasn't based on D&D at all. But the young developers assigned to the project, who were all mostly fresh out of college by the way, were massive D&D fans and wanted to make a dark fantasy fighting game, but since the idea of actually getting the D&D license was ludicrous, they crafted their own, fairly generic universe instead, and just dubbed it Iron Blood. Once the M2 was completely obliterated off the face of the earth, Iron Blood was smartly moved over to the PlayStation, where it was unfortunately given a shoestring budget and strict development
from never coming
deadline.
out, I guess,
again,
more accurate.
For many on the team, this was their first professional project. They attempted to use motion capture to bring the game's combat to life,
which was the style at the time.
Hiring performers from the Society for
I'm not sure if Mortal Kombat was the first game to do that.
Seriously,
but I feel like they definitely had a hand in popularizing that kind of style.
See, though, their dedication to their craft is admirable. Anyway, to record the actors' movements, Take-Two used the very, very early motion capture device known as Flock of Birds, which I last talked about in my KI retrospective, and similar to Rare's experience with the technology, it was a load of garbage that kept breaking down every 5 minutes. So the team were then forced to throw out the very little data they were able to record, and had to go back to animating the characters by hand, which many of them had very little experience with, which, yeah, shows in the final product.
Then, the best
just a handful of months from the game going gold, Acclaim started to have doubts that Iron Blood was going to light store shelves on fire, unless it had some type of hook. So they contacted TSR and made a bid for a D&D license, and were actually granted Ravenloft, which you might think would have elicited whoops of hype from the team, but it was quite the opposite. Acclaim apparently didn't give them extra development time, so all they could do was tweak a few names, add a few references, and slap an unfinished Strahd in there at the 11th hour.
More often than not.
This guy. While the team behind Iron Blood,
even if it's small money, just to get it as early as they can.
D&D fans suddenly being told, oh, you know that thing you're making as an homage to the thing you really like? Well, now that thing is the official thing, and you're not getting any extra time or money to make that thing. Damn, that's pretty sketchy of Acclaim, I have to say. Taking the earliest
it is Acclaim in the
pull
end.
The wool over everyone's eyes at the last second just to sell a product? Morally dubious? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. Which is why I'm proud to announce the Matt Fighter plushie campaign, which is being run by my friends over at Makeship. If 200 of you hit the link in the description below and slap a pre-order down for this purple and incredibly handsome skeleton warrior within the next 21 days, you'll lock in your order and he'll ship to your door, even internationally.
I mean, parts of him are, but I would call him blue guy.
If it doesn't meet that pre-order number, then no harm, no foul. You won't be charged and he'll be cast into the pit of failed mascots. But I mean, come on, how can you say no to that bony face? You can't! So head on over to the Makeship campaign page and buy the Matt McFighter, or go to hell!
That's a bit rough.
So, yeah, Acclaim were slimy scumbags for doing that.
You weak,
okay.
pathetic.
Sorry for pausing here, but I am curious. Can I even visit the website, I wonder? Oh, I can. 31. So it's 15% of the way there. So it might see the light of day at all.
But their gamble worked. Despite getting very, very negative reviews across the board, the newly named Iron and Blood Warriors of Ravenloft reportedly sold over 150,000 copies, making a tiny profit for Take-Two and helping to catapult them into the giant soulless machine they now are today. So with that very unhinged thought playing through your minds, that this stinker had a small part in popularizing Grand Theft Auto, it's time for us to discuss
that's how it always happens. Okay, we're like a third of the way there.
Like most PlayStation games released in this era, Iron and Blood starts off with a grainy CGI intro. It's not bad or anything,
yeah, that happened
but
a lot.
It's not good or anything either. Things kick off or kick down.
It probably was okay at the time.
With some really bare bones menus and even more dire loading screens. Can't you have a spinning magic orb or missile or a dice or something?
Yeah, something movable is a good thing to know if the game crashed or not.
Damn, look at all these wizards and or warriors. They're all separated into two distinct sides, essentially faces and heels. If they have frowns or fangs, then they're most likely the latter. If they're smiling and have bright colored clothes, then they're the former. Once you've selected one, this weird voice confirms
Where was the goblin? I don't see the goblin. Oh, there he is.
He's similar to the announcer from Mace the Dark Age, which I'd much rather be plain, but it's like his goofier younger brother, who's just trying to sound cool.
Sasha, Red Cloud,
yeah, that voice does sound better.
The game.
And the other one sounds like a knockoff.
As you can see, proportions are way off for pretty much the entire roster. What is this, Rescue Heroes Warcraft Edition? Backgrounds are one simple image and a square surface to fight on, and yeah, that's kind of it. There are the life bars, though, or life flames that just, ooh, oh, I'm gonna get to you later. But overall,
that's a terrible idea.
Looks pretty boring, which extends over
It's hard
to the
to tell how
audio
much
as
is
well.
left.
Most tracks don't make much of an impression,
Especially, like, if you
and for those
haven't
that
played it
do, well, it's mostly
before.
a negative one.
Combination.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Combination.
Every time you do a combo, even a two-hit one, you hear that every single time.
Oh, that's...
Combination.
And again, unlike KI, it's just annoying here because you'll often get situations like
why
these.
not just...
Combination. Combination.
Or even if you don't hit?
Combination. Combination.
All
Yeah...
of this blahness
Why not
is
just
at
have
least
it on screen as a
slightly offset by
word?
full CGI endings, but I use that pluralization loosely because there's only two. See, in campaign mode,
So depending
the main
on
single-player offering,
left or
there's
right
only
side wins, faces or
specific
heels,
conclusions for
heroes
the
or monsters.
two factions, and oh man, are they ever satisfying?
Oh, the sun doesn't... Never mind. For a second I thought the sun doesn't affect him. Nice! But what was that, Archer?
This means, unfortunately, that none of the individual characters have their
I
own
would say
endings,
backflip, but that
which
wasn't
leads to
it.
many, i.e. all of them, being rather forgettable. Like, damn, when even Criticom shows you up with better production value, you know you fucked up. Honestly, the only credit I can really give Warriors of Ravenloft here is its substantial 16-character roster, which plumps up to an impressive 20 when you factor in the 4 unlockable bosses. The only problem with so many
It's pretty good at
choices,
the time,
though,
yeah.
is having to grapple with the...
Mechanics. Oh.
Okay, so... Okay, alright, okay.
Come on, get it together.
Iron and Blood has some of the most random, haphazard mechanics I've ever seen. It's a 4-button fighter, quick, medium, strong, and miscellaneous?
I don't even know what that means.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
High and low block, and a sidestep, which is probably the worst sidestep in the history of sidestepping.
God damn.
You move so fast when you do it, circling to the side of your opponent so swiftly that the camera can't keep up, so it doesn't bother. Each character only has 2 special moves and 2 to 3 canned combos, with the rest of their kits composed of random buffs that they can only acquire through winning artifacts off other opponents.
Okay.
Rings of healing, earth tremor, magic tridents, stuff like that.
I guess a unique
You can
mechanic.
only keep these buffs if you don't lose all your lives, though. Yes, I said lives. By default, each character has 3, and if they gain any artifacts during them and then die for good, those relics and their associated powers go with them. Now, this would be fine if it was relegated to some sort of extra RPG or roguelike mode, but no, this is how the game works everywhere.
Okay,
You're
that's a
also
bit odd.
required to pick a team between 3 and 6 characters, and with 3
Up to
lives as
6,
the
wow.
default, fights go on and on and on until someone's finally declared the winner. I kind of get what they were maybe going for here. D&D
Maybe.
campaigns are composed of a whole party who has to go through epic, grueling encounters before conquering the enemy. But this is a fighting game, firstly, and not an RPG, so having matches set up like this slows the whole process down to an unfathomable crawl. Oh, and I didn't forget about you, life bar flames. These are awful.
It's one of the worst things I've ever
exactly
seen
how much health they have
for a
left.
fighting
Like,
game.
These are the worst life bars of all time. You know Battle Monsters, another game that's way better than this? It's the same sort of concept, using candles. But at least they're arranged in a bar-ish form. Like, oh, this special attack does 2 candles worth of damage. I mean, that works. It's weird, but it works.
Yeah.
But what the hell am I supposed to say about something like this? The
I wouldn't call
bizarre
candles
mechanic,
good,
though,
but
one
it's
that, to
better than
me,
this.
At least is unheard of in fighting games, is the fact that some characters have advantages on certain stages while others don't. For example, if you're fighting Sasha, the werewolf, on her stage, she, and only she, can summon a relic for use in that match. Which one does she get? A buff that increases her damage by 50%. Imagine you're playing, I don't know, Street Fighter 6, and whenever you're fighting Ryu on the Japan stage, there's a chance that someone will throw him those weird confectionaries he likes, and he gets a 75% increase in his fireball speed or some shit. Of course, you'll need to find someone who will play Ravenloft with you to take advantage of this insane mechanic, because I don't recall the CPU ever doing it to me, at least as far as I can figure, but still, why would anyone ever think this would be a good thing to add? But then again, I have to ask
There's
myself,
a lot of questionable
why would
decisions
they also
here.
add a 100% completely useless training mode? It's essentially one round of combat, and if you kill the CPU dummy, you win, and are then asked if you want a rematch or to go back to the main menu. Like, what's the point? Why is there a finite amount of health? And no, there aren't any dummy options, move lists, barely anything that makes this an actual training mode. Following that is the single-player campaign, which I've talked about already, and finally, the head-to-head option. Why didn't they just add a simple arcade ladder where you select one character, punch Strahd in the ass, and then get your ending? I have no idea. Actually, no, I do have an idea. Because Acclaim didn't give them the time or money in which to do so.
I mean, yeah. Like, ladder itself would take time, but I feel like having a one-on-one instead of like 3 or 3 or 6 on 6 or whatever.
Sure that when it comes to actual movement
that was a choice.
And feel, Iron and Blood is not slow at all. It is in fact so blisteringly fast to the point it's barely controllable. Doesn't matter if you're the big executioner guy or the hobbit dude, everyone's fast as fuck, boy, and this extends to everything. The sidestepping, the normal attacks, special moves, etc. Everything comes out at a moment's notice.
So is this the actual game
even
speed?
at a moment's notice, which leads to dumbass shit like this. Oh, yeah, that. See, the stages have these weird force fields that knock everyone down, and it doesn't matter if
there's
you're
variety in them, at least.
Dodging or whatever.
Some red, some blue, some look like lightning.
And when you get knocked down in Ravenloft, you stay down.
Or just two.
So horizontal movement is way too
red is fire and blue is lightning,
is
that all?
The game is way too slow. Combine this with the really sluggish camera, which never autocorrects to new positions, and suddenly this game starts to look a little bit like another bad fighting game that's way better than this. I next have to address the atrocity that occurs whenever you get turned around. You know, like in Virtual Fighter or Tekken, when your opponent slips behind you and then just takes getting hit or pressing the opposite direction and you're instantly facing your opponent again? Yeah, this is nothing like that. Every single character takes ages to turn their lumbering asses back around with an extended animation. Something I don't think I've ever seen before. Like, why? Why is the game so fast in every way but these
tactic it up
most egregious of all,
by going behind enemies, knowing they'll take a long time to turn around.
Whatsoever. This is a huge reason as to why Iron and Blood feels as bad as it looks. All you need to do is find one single gangly-ass normal and spam the everlasting hell out of it, because like Justin Wong has always said, the key to winning is to abuse shitty tactics over and over like crazy. I honestly think this has to be one of, if not the worst feeling game since Expect No Mercy, because it barely even feels like a dedicated fighting game, and more like a bland single-player action adventure that just so happens to have a bonus versus mode bolted on as an extra. I am struggling to think of any legit positives here, so folks, I think we just might have a contender. What sucks most of all, though, is that D&D, any scenario or pocket dimension, deserves and has potential to be a good fighting game. Imagine how sick it would have been if Capcom could have taken the sprites they made for their beat-em-ups and made a fighter out of it. Or hell, since Iron and Blood actually sold well, the team could have built a polished sequel from the ground up, especially with the experience they now had. But no! Take-Two execs just made that bag and then transformed into a publisher that's richer than some countries. With that said, though,
Yeah.
the unfortunate circumstances the team faced and the fact that
I mean,
for
there are
many of
people,
them this was their first
like
game, it still
individuals,
doesn't excuse
that are
just
racers
how
in a lot of
poor of an
countries.
experience this is, how awkward the matches are, and how miserable I was playing it. And it makes me even saltier that thanks to this, we're not going to get Karlak in a fighting game anytime soon, which is bullshit. All right, calm down. Look, I think my emotions are running a bit
Maybe there will
high
be a
here.
mod
They're
for
very heightened.
Baldur's Gate.
Remember, as a kid, I actually thought
Changes
this
the game
game
to a
looked
fighting game.
awesome, mostly due to the cover art. So when I realized years later that it was in fact the exact opposite, I felt betrayed. So instead of me casting the final judgment here, let's leave it to the dice to decide. Alright, so a dark shadow looms large over Iron and Blood, and then suddenly comes into view.
Cthulhu.
Expect no mercy steps out from the darkness, and then casts a dreadful spell that can turn any foe into a blithering idiot by uttering a single haunting phrase.
I have seen the amateur, and it is you.
If Iron and Blood is to survive
right.
and perform a counterspell, it's going to need to roll a 19 or more. Will they do it? Well, I'll be damned. Folks, friends, and fighters the world over, we have a new champion. Iron and
Did you
Blood
actually roll a
Warriors
net
of
20?
Ravenloft is now officially the worst fighting game. But that doesn't mean it can rest easy, because it shouldn't forget that there's many bad fighting games like it all over the world. And if you know of any contenders that could put up that good
God.
fight, let me know in the comments below.
Is it
or
Tiger
sound
Watch or
the
whatever it's
battle
called?
gong over on my social media. Until then, I'll see you next time, fellow warriors, on the worst fighting game.
Alright. This was pretty interesting. I'm not a that big of a fan of fighting games. I do dabble, especially lately with Guilty Gear, but I don't know. If there will be another the worst fighting game video, I'm not sure if I'm gonna watch that. But if there will be something like what happened and then fighting game that I know or something like that, I could easily go and watch that by Matt McMuscles. But if you want to see me do more, leave it in the comments. And I just might. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching this. I appreciate it a lot. I hope to see you next time. And goodbye. Have a great life, because one of us has to.